Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War, and we are on to week 171. Battle of Beer, and Canadian frustration and the Balfour Declaration. This is timely. If I'm remembering right, the Balfour Declaration involves Israel, right? The at least the very beginnings of a state of it or whatever. I've heard it talked about in amidst the general conversation that has been happening on the internet as of recording this. I am recording this the very week that Israel has begun a genocide. Quite frankly, well, there are two different. It's either an ethnic cleansing or a genocide. Both terms have been used willy-nilly, although they are separate. And ethnic cleansing didn't get defined until post-Yugoslavia. I did a little bit of research on my genocide history here, on this kind of thing, just so I could be a little bit more educated with the recent happenings on. So yeah, I'm not gonna get into it more than that. Y'all already know my stance. I've made it pretty clear that like my viewpoint on it. Though I'm actually, my opinion may be more changed now actually. So yeah, well, if it's timely, if the discussion comes up as he starts talking about the Balfour Declaration, if the Balfour Declaration is what I am thinking it is, then maybe I will speak more on it. Now, as someone that, yeah, killing innocent people bad. I do not have to need to say that, no matter what side I may stand on. Right? Israel is committing war crimes. They should be punished severely. The entire government, all of them. Harsh punishment. Okay. That's out of the way. Let's dive in.
Last week, the Central Powers made a breakthrough on the Italian front. So this week, the Allies counter with a breakthrough of their own on the Palestine front. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the Germans continued their operation of the Russian islands in the Gulf of Riga. Their combined offensive with Austria-Hungary smashed through on the Italian front. They were beaten by the French at La Malmaison, and they held their ground against the Canadians at Passchendaele. The Canadians were trying again this week, though.
What's been going on in the Greek front? Has anything happened in Greece lately?
On October 30th, they managed to enter the ruins of Passchendaele, but were driven back with heavy casualties. They attacked at dawn, trying to take the red line positions not taken the 26th, and the blue line positions beyond as well. But the Bellevue spur that had frustrated the Anzacs loomed large. The Germans hung onto it with torrents of machine gun fire, but the Canadians took it, though they used up the attacking battalions in the process. Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry lost 80% of its officers and 60% of its men. The Edmonton Battalion on its left lost 75%. The attacks that day were also made worse by a shortage of drinking water. It was as hard to bring up to the front as artillery shells were, and the endless swamp of the battlefield had been poisoned by human waste and rotting bodies. But the Canadian
and also, the mud.
Corps advanced a half mile in spite of the heavy casualties. Commander Arthur Currie now had to bring
Though, of course, the mud could be boiled out, of course, I guess.
Up his 2 reserve divisions for his next attack next week. The British War Cabinet on November 1st updated its estimates of the cost in men of the battle. Losses for October alone were 110,000. They also pointed out, though, that in a quiet month, the Ypres salient would see 35,000 casualties. So the current offensive was only responsible for the extra 75,000. Only. At a conference addressed by British Commander Sir Douglas Haig, Alan Brooke wrote, "I could hardly believe that my ears were not deceiving me. He spoke in the rosiest terms of our chances of breaking through. I had been all over the ground, and to my mind, such an eventuality was quite impossible. I was certain he was misinformed and had never seen the ground for himself. But the army would try again next week.
Of course.
There was a breakthrough currently in progress, though, the Central Powers one on the Italian front. Italian Army Chief of Staff Luigi Cadorna, when the attack had begun and turned into a breakthrough last week, had not issued rallying calls to his men, but issued blame, as usual, blaming everyone except himself for the collapse of the armies. Now, on the 27th, he ordered a general retreat. In the space of 4 days, the Central Powers had destroyed the Italian Second Army. On the 28th, the Austrians occupied Gorizia. The next day, the Germans capture Udine, former Italian headquarters. And by the end of the week, the Italian armies have retreated behind the Tagliamento River. Germany claims over 180,000 prisoners and 1,500 guns so far. The British Army also had big success this week, though, in the Middle East. On the Palestine front, where they had attacked and failed twice at Gaza so far this year. But now it would be a different attack. They had spent a 2-month campaign of deception aimed at convincing the Ottomans under Kress von Kressenstein that Gaza was again the target, including having false orders captured. A few weeks ago, right, a British officer had allowed Turkish guards to chase him from their guard post, and just as he escaped, he dropped a haversack smeared with horse's blood, so it looked like he had been wounded. The sack contained details of the next attack on Gaza and the impracticality of an attack on Beersheba. So now the British offensive.
They have a misspelling that they never fixed. Oh, that's so cool. Beersheba, wow, that's interesting. That's cool. I don't know. That's always when something that like they make very very few mistakes in this series. So to see something like this, it stands out. Not in a bad way, I don't think. I just think it's like this kind of mistake is just a little, gives you a little chuckle.
Against Beersheba under General Edmund Allenby kicked off.
Especially after it's been 6 years since this episode's release.
October 31st. The Turks were totally fooled and suddenly saw 40,000 men bearing down on them. The first attackers to go into action were the New Zealand Mounted Rifles, but troops of the Australian Mounted Division, the 4th Light Horse Brigade, in spectacular fashion, launched a full-on improvised cavalry charge using sharpened bayonets as swords. See, aerial recon showed that the Turks had neither barbed wire nor...
Wait, but here they're spelling it Beersheba as well. What is the actual spelling? Is it actually Beersheba or is it Beersheba?
More anti-cavalry ditches. The 4th Brigade took over 1,000 prisoners. At a mile distant, their 1,000 hooves were stuttering thunder. They were an awe-inspiring sight, galloping through the red haze, knee to knee and horse to horse. Machine guns and rifle fire just roared, but the 4th Brigade galloped on. The last half mile was a berserk gallop with the squadrons in magnificent line. They plunged up the slope, the Turkish bayonets thrusting up for the bellies of the horses. We heard the mad shouts as the men jumped down into the trenches. A following regiment thundered over, and to a triumphant roar of voices and hooves was galloping down the half-mile slope right into the town. Beersheba had fallen.
Okay. The way they pronounce it. Hold on, I'm getting hair in my mouth. What the fuck? The way they pronounce it, it sounds like the spelling is supposed to be the spelling as it was on the map. Bersheeba. But they keep spelling it here in the quotes and stuff as how it is in the title. I'm a little confused on what the proper spelling is.
Fallen. A much larger city was possibly about to fall as well, but to revolution. On November 1st, there was unrest in Petrograd as the Maximalists threatened armed action. Now, this was a radical wing of socialist revolutionaries, mainly active in the early part of the century. They got their name for demanding full implementation of the maximum socialization of the expected revolution. They also had a much more favorable view of terrorism than other revolutionaries, endorsing political terror, attacks on members of the government, expropriations, things like bank robberies, and economic terror, attacks on property or people like factory bosses. They were often compared to anarchists, though they rejected that comparison since they generally believed in a popular revolutionary dictatorship, rejecting parliamentary democracy in any form in favor of a secret, disciplined organization that controlled the general population. They had been nearly destroyed by arrests in 1906 and 1907 after the abortive 1905 revolution in Russia. And they weren't the only people making plans, though. Lenin had finally returned to Russia from his exile in Finland, clean-shaven and disguised with a wig and glasses.
He looks so... Okay, it's the wig that's doing it, I'm guessing. But man, that still doesn't look like Lenin.
Now lead the Bolsheviks and plot the final downfall of the Kerensky government. Last week, the Bolshevik Central Committee had met and had voted 10-2 for an immediate armed uprising. They finally reached consensus for it to happen next week at the All-Russian Congress of Soviets. Russia's allies were certainly concerned about the possibility of the fall of the Kerensky government, which could lead to Russia leaving the war. In Britain, the Balfour Declaration was issued November 2nd. It was a letter from Foreign Secretary Lord Balfour to Lord Rothschild that expressed Britain's support for a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The final discussions leading to the public declaration were partly about how it could be used to rally Russia's Jews to persuade their compatriots to continue fighting. But Colonel Alfred Knox observed...
I've never heard that take on the Balfour Declaration. Never thought of it like that. I mean, yeah, Russia does have a size... Is Russia's Jewish population sizable enough to hold that much sway? Don't think so.
Serving in Russia for Britain, had written in his diary, "There is evidently not the slightest hope that the Russian army will ever fight again." A British Foreign Office official, Ronald Graham, had written to Balfour last week, "Almost every Jew in Russia is a Zionist, and if they can be made to realize that the success of Zionist aspirations depends on the support of the Allies and the expulsion of the Turks from Palestine, we shall enlist a most powerful element in our favor." It was now arranged for 3 leading Zionists to go to Petrograd to rally Russian Jews to the Allied cause. The British Undersecretary...
Remember, the creation of a Jewish state in the Middle East has only ever, from the moment of its conception here by Western powers to this day, its existence is reliant upon the West feeling like it needs it in the Middle East. The Zionist state, the Jewish state, is just purely there to serve as a military base and a disrupting, disunifying voice in disruptive force in the Middle East, a destabilizing force in the Middle East. That is essentially the only purpose to the West for Israel. That's all it exists for. There's no good-hearted reason. Like, people will say that it's like because of Hitler's genocide, because of the Holocaust, and the thousands of years of maltreatment within Europe. Really, no, they don't actually believe that. It's all because Israel can be used as a Western ally. That's it. The moment there's someone better in the Middle East, or they don't even need Israel anymore, that the Western support gonna be gone. Blink of an eye, it's gone. So I used to say, I'm actually going to talk about it, which is perhaps a mistake. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because I feel like it is something that needs to be discussed. Or at least as someone with an audience, I feel as though I do have a role in, however minor, in needing to say something. It is, if you are one of the people that asks when someone says they support Palestine, and you ask them, so you support Hamas, you are a problem. Shut the fuck up. Because when people say they support Israel, no one asks the Israeli supporters like, "Oh, so you support targeting civilians?" Right? No one asks that. You only ask these people, the BBC in particular, from what I've been seeing online, only ask that question in regards Palestinian supporters and Palestinians themselves. They don't ask it to their Israeli counterparts at all. That's racism. It's racism. Stop that. Shut the fuck up. It's you use this thing, okay? Your brain is gonna, your brain should be telling you common knowledge here is yes, of course. People do not support the bombing and killing children. Unfortunately, Israel has made over the years Gaza, the West Bank, into an open-air prison, one of the most densely populated areas in the entire world of 2 million people. They have blocked it off on all 3 of its land fronts, and the Israeli Navy is sitting on its shores, killing anyone that tries to leave. Anyone. And they're dropping white phosphorus. They are committing blatant war crimes. They are attempting, I would probably define it as an ethnic cleansing. They want the entire area to be just Jewish, just Israeli, not Palestinian. I have always said that perhaps it would be better for the world that Jewish people do have a place to call their home, their own state to have, just because of the historical shit that they've had to deal with. However, I no longer believe the current state of Israel is one that should continue on as a functioning state in this world. Same with, Putin's government, right? If you support Ukraine, you should be supporting Palestine. It is as simple as that. If you support Ukraine but do not support Palestine, quite frankly, I'm going to assume you're a racist. And I do not want to interact with you in any way whatsoever. Now that that's out of the air, out in the air, right? You got to be consistent, right? You got to be consistent in your thought process here. Let's go ahead and finish up this episode.
Secretary of State believed that the situation there could be restored by spring. But whether or not Russia would fight again, a newer ally was joining the fight in the field this week. On November 2nd, an American battalion took over from a French one at Bâle-le-Mont. This was the first time regular American troops had gone into action in the war. The next morning, one of their outposts was shelled by artillery and then raided by 213 Bavarians. This outnumbered the Americans 4-1, and 3 Americans were killed. 2 Germans were killed, and 1 deserted to the Americans, but the Germans took 12 American POWs. The rest of the Americans were found with white, drawn faces and haunted eyes. General John Pershing apparently wept when he heard of the attack. An inquiry included that the Americans were not fully trained and should be taken out of the lines. And we come to the end of the week. Canadians frustrated in Belgium, Australians and New Zealanders victorious in the Middle East, the Germans still breaking through in Italy, plans for a coup in Russia and for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Think about that American battalion taking over the line. I'm not certain if any training away from the field could really prepare you for the actual brutal reality of modern war. The world had never before seen such wholesale, impersonal, anonymous slaughter. There is one way, and one way only, to train for such combat. Experience it firsthand, day after day and month after month. Of course, this will involve the slaughter of tens of thousands of your men. But that's what's going to happen to really train those Americans. If you want to know more about the American...
And that was the Battle of Beersheba. Canadian frustration in the Balfour Declaration, the Great War, week 171. Got nothing else to add here at the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.